Week 5 of the 2025 season is officially in the books, and we got to see a couple of upsets and a couple of key matchups. So in this video, I want to give you guys my Week 6 power rankings of the 2025 NFL season. Subscribe and like the video if you do go on to enjoy. Let's hop into it. And we are going to begin with at number 32, the New York Jets. Yes, we have a new number 32. For the longest time, it's been either the Tennessee Titans. I think the Carolina Panthers might have been there at one point, but it's now the New York Jets. The Jets are the last team in the NFL with a big goose egg in the win column. We saw Tennessee get a miraculous win versus Arizona. Miami has a win. Raiders have a win. The Jets don't have a win on the season. Defensively, they have, just completely fallen apart. It's funny to think about how good this defense was like 3 or 4 years ago and just how fallen off they've gotten to this at this point. Their secondary is atrocious outside of Sauce Gardner. The defensive line, by the way, who was going up against the Cowboys team that had 4 backup offensive linemen in, I don't think they sacked Dak Prescott a single time. It's just a bad team right now. I do think they're heading in the right direction from a coaching perspective and from a culture perspective. But in terms of talent, personnel, maybe even some schematics, I think they're a long ways away. And no, I don't think this is just a Justin Fields issue. I don't think he's helping the issue, but I don't think he's also the reason why this team is so bad. At number 31, I have the Tennessee Titans. So the Titans were definitely considered for this last spot, but to their credit, they did get a win. They're 1-4 on the season, and it just happened to be one of the craziest victories maybe I've ever seen in my entire life. We're talking everything that could have went wrong for Arizona went wrong, and everything that could have went right for Tennessee went right. I'm talking the fumble before getting into the end zone from Emery DeMarcado. We're talking about the interception that ends up turning into a touchdown. We're even talking about Cam Ward pulling off some magic with that game-winning drive. Probably his best drive of the season, by the way. And now they're 1-4. Look, this Titans team is still one of the worst teams in the NFL, and there's no denying that. But I will give them their flowers. They could have packed it up and called it a day versus Arizona, but they kept fighting. They kept making plays. You can tell there's an effort to try and win. They're clearly just at a talent deficiency, but man, I give them credit for at least trying, and I like what I've seen from Cam Ward, but they're still a long ways away. Coming in at number 30, I have the Cincinnati Bengals. The Cincinnati Bengals are not good. Without Joe Burrow, this team is a complete disaster. I will give them their flowers. They did kind of go crazy in the fourth quarter versus the Detroit Lions. We saw Jake Browning make a couple nasty throws, but outside of that, in the 3-ish games we've seen him now, he's been probably the worst starting quarterback by a good mile. He had a couple throws in this Lions game early on that were just straight up abysmal. I'm talking just layup interceptions for the Detroit Lions. Again, give him his flowers. He did make a couple of things happen in the fourth quarter, which hopefully they can build off of, but I'm not too optimistic about this Bengals team. They just don't have the talent. The offensive line is bad. The running game is bad. Defensively, they have Trey Hendrickson, who's a game changer, but outside of him, it's just a very below average defense. And statistically speaking, they have one of the highest net point differential at -71. They've only scored 85 points, but they've given up 156 points. That's just crazy. I don't really know how this team wins game moving forward. They need to somehow stay afloat until Joe Burrow returns, but I just don't see how they're going to do it. Moving to number 29, the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, I've been quite hesitant to move down this Raiders team. They've sort of been stuck in like that 23-22 range for me, but after this last week, they're definitely one of the worst teams in the NFL. This game basically confirmed it for me. I think the biggest culprit that needs to be talked about in more detail is probably Geno Smith. The downfall of Geno Smith has to be studied, at least through the first 5 weeks of the season. I thought last year he was a pretty good quarterback, and for most of his tenure in Seattle, I thought he was a pretty solid starter. He was just kind of in a tough spot in Seattle where he had to play with a bad offensive line and some, receivers that were a little bit inconsistent, but man, he went to Las Vegas, and you have Genty, of course, Bowers, you have Myers. In theory, you had a solid enough offensive line. But man, Geno Smith is not doing this team any favors. Yes, the offensive line is not good. Yes, the ground game is inconsistent. Yes, Brock Bowers has been injured. But Geno Smith has been by far and away probably the reason why they're 1-4. The interceptions are just inexcusable for a veteran of his type. And it's shocking to me that Pete Carroll keeps rolling him out there. I'm not kidding. If Aiden O'Connell is healthy, I think Aiden O'Connell should be their starting quarterback. I don't think he would win them a ton of games, but I think he gives them a better chance at this point. Geno Smith has just been god-awful. Moving to number 28, the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins are 1-4. They have a net point differential of -38. And even though I think Tua and this offense has actually played fairly well these past few weeks, they're just simply put not good enough. They cannot run the football efficiently nor effectively because this offensive line is straight up god-awful. And defensively, they've been very disappointing in the defensive line, especially against the run. They've just been horrific against it. And in the passing game too, they just don't have the outside corners or safeties to get the job done. This is just an incomplete team. You have a couple puzzle pieces like Jalen Waddle, I guess Tua, Minka Fitzpatrick, pieces here and there, but then surrounding those guys is just voids basically, where you have just nobody's playing in position, or you have dudes that are just simply underperforming. This team, again, as I've said in probably every single time I've talked about the Dolphins, is heading towards a reset. New head coach, probably getting off of massive contracts. I wouldn't be surprised if Tyreek gets cut. I wouldn't be surprised if you see some of the edge rushers off the team, maybe even Tua. Like, I genuinely think this Dolphins team is going to start from scratch all over again, and I think that's probably the right move. They're just clearly not good enough to even contend for a playoff spot, or they're not even good enough to even be a 500 team. This is just a bad football team, and they're competing for a top 5 pick. Moving to number 27, I have the New York Giants. The New York Giants schedule gets absolutely brutal these next couple weeks. They have a couple of just insane matchups and insane stretches that I truly do expect this Giants team to probably go on a bit of a losing streak here, which is a bit of a shame because I actually like what I've seen from this Giants team. I just don't think it's going to amount to a ton of wins. I like the culture they're building. I like the little bit of swagger and energy that Scatabo and Jackson Dart have given this team. But then you also have to look at the facts. They're 1-4. They have a net point differential of -40. The offense has not been that great this year. And defensively, I think they're doing a fine job, but they're not this top 5 defense or anything crazy. They have talents, but they also have a couple of deficiencies, and they just have a couple of young guys that they need to develop, and that's what you're going to get out of the season. They're a scrappy team. I expect them to be competitive with a lot of teams out there, but you just lost to the Saints, and the Saints were one of the worst teams in the NFL, and the Saints handled that game. So I think that tells you a decent bit about this team. All in all, I think this Giants team is just heading in the right direction, but they're not quite yet there. Moving to number 26, the aforementioned New Orleans Saints. I gotta respect the head-to-head. I do think if these teams faced off 10 times, I genuinely think the Giants probably win 6 of the 10 games. But here we are. We just happen to get the Saints winning this game. And frankly, the Saints, they kind of handled that game. I've been pretty impressed with Spencer Rattler all year long. I think we need to start giving him more credit and more flowers. I keep seeing mock drafts where these Saints are taking a quarterback, and I'm like, why? They got Spencer Rattler. He's playing at a very capable level right now. It just happens to be that his team is just one of the worst teams in the NFL from a talent perspective. The good thing for the Saints team, though, is that they're clearly heading in the right direction. At least you think they are. I like what I've seen from Kelvin Banks. I think there's some young pieces here to work with. They're going to end up probably with the top 5 picks, so they can add some pieces to the defense and maybe another piece on the offense. They'll probably have an offseason where they get off big contracts and sort of start looking towards the future, at least you'd hope. But I think there's some things to like about this team. It's clear to me that when this Saints team goes up against a caliber of opponent that is similar to them, the Saints are going to look a lot better, like they did in this Giants game. But when they go up against teams that actually have talent and are actually really good, they're just not going to be able to keep up in those matchups. But in a game like this, they won the game, so give them their flowers, tip the cap. Moving to number 25, the Carolina Panthers. The Carolina Panthers are a tough cookie to crack, man. They're 2-3 on the season, and they only have a net point differential of -17. But man, they're just inconsistent, and it's really frustrating with this team because, man, they looked horrible in week 1, fairly bad in week 2, and then they made a nice run at the end of it. A huge game in week 3, and you're like, oh, here we go. Bryce Young's ready to go. And a stinker in week 4. And they bounced back in week 5. They're just a really difficult team to figure out. And it's for clear reasons. They have a lot of issues on this roster. Offensively, they're not there yet. I do think they've gotten better, but they're just not there yet. And offensively, they're a little bit inconsistent right now because they haven't really had a consistent ground game. Though Rico Dowell was great this past week. We'll see if he can keep it up. You've also had questions in the receiving core outside of Ted McMillan. So there's just been a lot of things that have been holding back this Panthers team. But if they have started to figure those issues out, such as more opportunities for Rico, more opportunities for Ted, getting Bryce Young, clean pockets, getting him some things to work with easy, then yeah, I think this Panthers team can be a bit of a competitive team. They've just been inconsistent, and I want to find that consistency, and I am hoping that they're starting to catch their stride here. They have a couple games up ahead against some bad defenses. This upcoming week is the Dallas Cowboys, so I want to see them start to get their act together, and I think they will. Moving to number 24, I have the Cleveland Browns. The Browns finally inserted a new quarterback in, and I actually like what I saw from Dylan Gabriel. Now, did Dylan Gabriel have this epic, dominant performance? No, they punted the ball a lot, had a lot of 3-and-outs. were inefficient on third down. But Dylan Gabriel also gave them chances to win this game. I mean, this was a close game versus a good team in Minnesota that has a great defense and a great defensive coordinator. And Dylan Gabriel had no turnovers, threw 2 touchdowns. I thought he played quality football. And that's what they're going to need from him moving forward. They just need him to be a bit of a game manager. Get the ball out to your running back. Get the ball out to your weapons, Judy, Fannin, David Njoku, now Quinshaw Judkins. And rely on this defense to keep the games close. And I think once they start to go up against, not so great competition, I think this Browns team is actually going to start to stack up some wins. They're 1-4 now, but I wouldn't be surprised if they end the season with like 6, 7, 8 wins on the year. 8 might be a little bit of a push, but 5, 6, 7 feels pretty likely. Moving to number 23, we have the Baltimore Ravens. Boy, if you had told me at the beginning of the year that the Ravens and Browns would be right next to each other at my week 6 power rankings, I probably would have thought the Browns were cracked and that Joe Flacco was just having an awesome year. But then you tell me, no, the Ravens are just a bad football team. That would be quite shocking. It's such a downfall that probably needs its own separate video to actually go into detail about it. But when you think about this Ravens team, man, you got to talk about the injuries first. They have just been flooded and absolutely flooded with injuries. It's been abysmal for them. So many injuries. I'm talking Lamar, Madubuike, Humphrey, Hamilton, I think, missed this past game. They're just killed by them right now. And there's just really nothing you can do about it. But even when they were healthy, the defense has taken a huge step back. And the reason why I thought the Ravens were ready to potentially go after a Super Bowl was because they basically brought back the exact same team as last year, but added in a Malachi Starks, added in a Jair Alexander, a DeAndre Hopkins, etc., etc. But they have taken a step back, and it is really sad to see. They're 1-4. If Lamar misses this week, they're probably going to be 1-5. And I don't know where you go right now for the Ravens. Their schedule does ease up, but their wiggle room to lose a game or two is very much slipping right now. They have got to get their act together and have got to get healthy if they want to somehow manage to climb back up this season. Moving to number 22, I got the Arizona Cardinals. If you guys watched my reaction video that I believe came out yesterday or the day before, you guys would have heard my rants on the Arizona Cardinals, and I'm going to kind of repeat the same thing I said there, but in maybe a bit more of a calm tense. I'm done with this Cardinals team. I came into this year thinking they were a legitimate playoff contender, a team that potentially could push for the division, but they just have not shown to me that they're a serious team. I think defensively they're playing pretty sharp football. Granted, they haven't gone up against the highest level competition so far this year, but I feel like they're holding their own. They clearly have gotten better on that side. But this offense just has not taken a step forward. If anything, it almost feels like they've taken a bit of a step back. Now, in fairness, no James Conner, and you're also down to your running back 3 and 4, which obviously hurt you in this game. But still, Kyler Murray has just not been a good football player this year. He's been fine, but he's not been good. He's just been fine, below average to maybe just average. Marvin Harrison Jr. shows you flashes, and it's like, that's the guy we drafted with the top pick. And then he's just quiet for the rest of the game. It's just been a really weird season for them so far. They haven't gone up against high-level competition, yet they're 2-3 on the season. They're not going to go very far this year unless they get their act together and start to go on a roll. They do have a net point differential of +7 somehow, but they're 2-3. They have got to figure it out. Moving to 21, I have the Houston Texans. Now, the Texans have had back-to-back wins and about 5 quarters of really solid offensive play, which is a positive sign for this team. However, I do want to push the brakes a little bit. They got going versus a horrific Tennessee Titans defense, and in this past week, they beat up on a Ravens defense that is basically a practice squad at this point. I still have my concerns for this Texans team, but I'm hoping they're building their confidence up. I'm hoping that this team really gets going. They have one of, if not the best defenses in all of football. They only have given up 61 total points this year. Granted, not against the greatest offenses, but still, 61 points is still 61 points. That is a ridiculous amount to give up in 5 weeks. Their offense, though, needs to get going. The first few weeks were abysmal. They started to get going in that Titans game, and they really looked good versus the Ravens. I'm hoping that this is sort of the turning point for this team. Unfortunately for this Texans team, if this is the turning point, I mean, the Colts and Jags are 4-1, and they look pretty dang good right now. So it's a bit hard to sort of predict and project where this team's going to be right now in terms of their division moving forward. But yeah, they need to get some things going, and especially on the offensive end, and they have. We'll just see if they can keep it up and find some consistency on the offensive end. Moving to number 20, I got the Dallas Cowboys. So I'm a Cowboys fan, And maybe this is a little bit harsh on this team, but I can't buy into this Cowboys team unless I see this defense take a pretty drastic step forward. I thought they took a step forward this past week versus the Jets, but it's the Jets. And we got to be real. This Jets defense this Jets offense is absolutely terrible. The Cowboys, though, have one of the best, if not arguably the best offense in the NFL. This past week, with 4 starting offensive linemen out, no CeeDee Lamb, no Kevontae Turpin, they went out there and they absolutely balled versus the Jets, and they've been balling all year long. They played good versus Philadelphia. They played great versus the Giants. They didn't play special against the Bears, but if you actually watch the game, they actually played pretty well offensively. And then against, of course, these past 2 weeks, the Packers and now the Jets have been excellent offensively. The Cowboys have one of the best offenses in the league, but they got to figure it out defensively. Now, the cavalry is coming. DeMarvion Overshown, Kalen Carson, Savon Ravel. Those guys will help. I just don't know how much. The Cowboys have the Panthers this week. I don't know if that'll tell us much, especially if they win the game. But they have a couple tougher matchups down the stretch that I think will tell us about this team. I wouldn't count the Cowboys out when talking about maybe making a playoff push. I think there's a pathway for them. But they got to win some games against high-level teams, which is not going to be easy with this Cowboys defense. Moving to number 19, I got the Chicago Bears. Now, the Bears had a bye this week, so this is a tougher one to predict. But they have gotten going the past 2 weeks. The offense has definitely looked a lot better from where they were last year. Defensively, they still have their flaws, and they're not a perfect defense, but I had to respect the win over the Cowboys because, let's be honest, the Bears they handled the Dallas Cowboys. It was 31-14 in that game, or I think that was the final score. They handled Dallas for the most part, both offensively and defensively. They made enough plays to, of course, keep them to 14 in terms of some turnovers. I do want to say this, though. Their 2 victories are against maybe not the greatest of competition. The Cowboys are a good team, but not a great team, and the Raiders are one of the worst teams in the NFL. Again, there's a bye week this week. I think we'll start to get to see a bit more from this Bears team moving forward. So, yeah, they're at my number 20 spot now, but we'll get a better idea as to where they actually are probably after this next week. Moving to number 18, I got the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons also had a bye week, but it's been sort of an up and down year for them. They've had great games. They've had bad games. Again, they're on a bye, so they kind of get clumped in here with the Bears. They're both 2-2. I think the Falcons, if they went up against the Bears, would win, especially if Penix is playing well. Let's hope they can find some consistency on the offensive end. Moving to number 17, I got the Minnesota Vikings. Back-to-back overseas games, and they have won one of them and lost one of them as well. Their net point differential is positive 26. Unfortunately, we don't really know who this Vikings team is because we just don't know what their quarterback situation looks like. I believe they have a bye this week, so we won't get an answer after this week. But once McCarthy does get back, I think that's when we can start to properly rank this team in terms of, are they a top 16 team or are they more so a bottom 16 team? Once we get McCarthy fully going, I think it'll be easier to figure that one out. Moving to number 16, the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, I didn't get a chance to talk about the Chiefs-Jaguars games because when I was recording my reaction, the game was still playing, so I didn't give any reaction to that one. The Chiefs lost, and they have some concerns. They're 2-3 on the year. I think there have been signs of growth on the offensive end, and it'll only get better when Rashee Rice comes back. But they don't really have wiggle room right now. They're not in a good spot record-wise. They're 2-3, and when you look at the rest of their division, man, you're competing with the Chargers. You're competing now with the Broncos, who have gotten things going. Granted, the separation's not far. It's still manageable, but still, they have got to start to pick things up. They don't have a ground game. They're very one-dimensional offensively. It's very Patrick Mahomes dependent, and that's not going to change when Rashee Rice comes into town. But I do hope they make a trade for a running back. I think if they can add a Breece Hall or an Alvin Kamara or somebody like that, it would open up this offense a lot. And defensively, they're still playing good football. So I don't want to give up on this Chiefs team yet. I still think they're probably going to make the playoffs. And, you know, when they're in the playoffs, you can never count them out. But they got some stuff to figure out. This is the first time, like, real adversity has really hit this Chiefs team. I'm talking real adversity. They've had adversity in the past, but this is the first time it is genuinely, like, real and on the line. Moving to number 15, I got the New England Patriots. Man, the Patriots are 3-2, and they're coming off by far their biggest victory in probably the last couple years. They beat the Bills in Buffalo in a whiteout on Sunday Night Football. That is one of the toughest environments to play. And man, the Patriots, they kind of dominated the Bills. Like, genuinely, they beat them down from start to finish. I know Drake May didn't have a touchdown in this game, but I thought this was one of Drake May's best games of his entire career. Maybe his actual best, especially when you talk about competition and who he's going up against. But I was really impressed by his poise, his confidence, the playmaking ability, the accuracy. There was a lot to like from Drake May in this game, and he's looking like a young superstar. Offensively, they made enough plays. They made Josh Allen uncomfortable. They held the ground game in check with James Cook. You finally get Christian Gonzalez, and Carlton Davis was banged up a little bit, but you kind of got to see those guys fully going, and it's pretty fun. This Patriots team is clearly heading in the right direction, and when you look at the AFC, there's a very real chance they could run the table and maybe make the playoffs, because the AFC is not very strong this year. There is a real chance that if the Patriots go on a run here, especially with their schedule not being too difficult, they got a chance. Moving to number 14, I got the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'll be quick on them. They had a bye week this week. They're 3-1. I have my concerns because they still have a net point differential of -2, but they are 3-1. So we'll keep an eye on them. I have a lot of issues with this team. The good news for the Steelers, their division stinks right now. I mean, genuinely, it's awful. So the Steelers team has a great opportunity here to potentially win the division. Coming in at number 13, I got the San Francisco 49ers. San Francisco is a bizarre team. They're 4-1, and boy, they're winning games in miraculous fashion. Mac Jones hobbled, playing on like one leg. No Brock Purdy for most of the year. George Kittle's been out all of the year. No Ayuk. Ricky Pearsall misses time. The offensive line stinks. he's somehow getting the ball like 50 times a game. And defensively, they are banged up as hell with their best player, Nick Bosa, or one of, not out there. But yet they're 4-1, and they've played pretty good teams. I mean, this Niners team is actually like, they're a miracle. And I do eventually think the wheels have to fall off at some point, but man, you got to give credit to Kyle Shanahan, man. I know he gets a lot of flack from Niners fans, but man, he's one of the best coaches in football. I think it's time we give him his flowers for what he's doing with this specific team. It's been very impressive what they've done so far. I want to move them higher, but man, I just can't buy into a Mac Jones-led team yet. I got to see it a little bit more. If they get a win versus a big team eventually, which I guess they did versus the Rams, but if they can do it again, they'll be in my top 10, I promise you. Moving to number 12, I got the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I put the Jags in front of the Niners because you obviously have to respect the head-to-head, but the Jaguars are 4-1, have a net point differential of positive 27, and hey, on Monday Night Football, they just beat the Kansas City Chiefs, who I know are not a great football team this year. They were 2-2 heading into the game, now 2-3. That's still the defending AFC champs, so you gotta give them their flowers. Trust me, I don't want to buy into this Jaguars team either. It still amazes me how great this defense has been this year. I mean, they've actually been a really good unit, and offensively, they haven't been great this year, but they've definitely made enough plays. This is a funky team that just finds ways to win games. I know their schedule hasn't been like the hardest thing in the world, but they've passed every test for the most part. They're a weird team, but they're 4-1, and they're in the contest to win the division. And they have a huge head start over a number of different teams to potentially make a playoff push as well. Somehow, this Jaguars team has turned it around in the first 5 games. We'll see if they can keep it going, because boy, they're a weird team when you actually sit down and think about it. Moving to number 11, I got the Washington Commanders. Washington 3-2, but they also haven't had their starting quarterback for, I think, 2 of the 5 games. So we got to give that, obviously a little bit of a head nod. They've been up and down this year. There was a okay week 1 game, a bad week 2 game. Then you, of course, had Daniels out for the next 2 weeks. But then Daniels returns and looks very good versus the Chargers. It's been kind of up and down. It's clear to me this Commanders team is a good football team. They're a good football team. They will probably end the season above 500. It just is a question of, are they going to make the playoffs? Right now, if the playoffs started today, I don't think they would make it, and that's kind of where I stand on this team. I feel like they're going to be a team that gets to around 10 wins, but is 10 wins going to be enough to get you into the playoffs this year in the NFC? I'm not sure. I'll keep an eye out on this Commanders team. They're clearly a good football team. I think we'll know a lot about this Commanders team when we face off against the Philadelphia Eagles. Now we enter into our top 10, and at number 10, I got the Denver Broncos. One of the most impressive wins of the season by any team was the Denver Broncos coming from behind to beat up on the Philadelphia Eagles. That's a huge victory, and while I know Philadelphia has their flaws, they still have that championship DNA and plenty of talent. And Denver held their own. It was a tough first half, let's not get that twisted, but they turned it around and made a couple big plays late in the game, including a 2-point conversion that ended up being the reason why they won the game. I love the aggressiveness. I love the way the offensive line is playing. I want to continue to see more from Bo Nix, but I like what I saw in the second half, and defensively, they're clearly one of the best defenses out there. They have a recipe for success, a great culture, and if they can just get their quarterback to be consistent and not turn the ball over, then I think they're going to win a lot of football games this year. Their division is open, and I think there's a little bit of some pressure on them to try and etch out as many wins as possible to potentially win this division. So it'll be very interesting. They got to start winning their in-division matchups, though. That Chargers loss early on the season definitely does hurt them. Speaking of the Chargers, at number 9, I got the LA Chargers. I have to respect the head-to-head between the Broncos and Chargers, so that's why I put the Chargers. The tough thing about the Chargers right now is that they're just so injured on this offensive line. I mean, this offensive line coming into the season was thought of to maybe be one of the best units out there, but because of injuries and honestly some underperformance from some of the guys in the middle, the offensive line has been kind of not so great. Defensively, they're still playing good football, but the offense has taken a bit of a step back from where they were in weeks 1, 2, and even a bit of 3. Since then, the offense just hasn't really been able to get going. It's felt like they've been stuck in quicksand, and they'll make a couple explosive plays here and there, but they're just not consistently moving the ball well. They now have injuries on the running back room. I think Hampton's out for some time now. Najee Harris is out for the season. You also pair that with an offensive line that's also not great right now either, so they're a very one-dimensional team, and that's just not what this Chargers team wants to be. This Chargers team wants to be very run-heavy, rely on this offensive line, put pressure on defenses, and then use the play action, go and take some shots down the field to really open up the game plan. And unfortunately, if you don't have Amari and Hampton going, if you don't have Najee Harris there, it's really tough for this Chargers team. So I have them at 9, but I have a feeling that, man, there's a good chance they might fall down this board a little bit more. The good news for the Chargers is their schedule eases up for the most part the rest of the way until later in the season. Then it gets quite difficult, but they have some opportunities to get a bit more healthy, and they desperately need to get healthy, especially on this offensive side of things. Moving to number 8, I got the Seattle Seahawks. I was so impressed with their loss versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Buccaneers are a genuine potential Super Bowl contender this year, and these two teams were absolutely duking it out. It was an absolute Marvel, DC, Dragon Ball Z type of matchup here. I mean, we're talking just action, 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 and it was so much fun. Seahawks lost the game, but they had the ball with the chance to win the game. A tip pass goes for an interception. They lose the game. So it's hard to really blame the Seahawks for that one. That was just sort of a freak incident. But the Seahawks have everything and more to win a lot of games this year. Great receivers with JSN stepping into a huge role this year, a quarterback playing at a high level, and a healthy offensive line, a running game that's been pretty good this year, and one of the top defenses out there. This Seahawks team has a recipe for success. They have a net point differential of positive 41, which I believe is the second highest in the NFC. They're clearly doing something right, and man, if they just could have not thrown that interception, I think they would have beat the Buccaneers and probably be 4-1. So the Seahawks are 3-2. I still think there's a very good chance they end up winning their division. Although keep an eye on San Francisco. They're sneaky good too. Moving to number 7, I got the LA Rams. Now the Rams are 3-2, and I would say both their losses have been quite frustrating because they were very winnable games. They should have beat the Philadelphia Eagles because they were up big, and then they lost to San Francisco 49ers, who were missing like half their team. This Rams team does have some issues, especially in their secondary, where right now they're just not playing at a very high-end, consistent level. But we know this team has a great offense. We know they have a great defensive line and a great front seven. We know they can run the football. And frankly, had Kyren Williams not fumbled the ball a bajillion times, they'd probably win this game against San Francisco. So that's why I still have them fairly high. I know I'm giving them some leeway here. I'm sort of justifying their losses, but I still think this Rams team is very good. And if right now, if you said, hey, the Rams were squaring off against the Seahawks, who would I favor? I would favor the Rams. You said the Rams go up against the Commanders. I would say the Rams. You keep kind of going down the list here. I would favor the Rams over most of these teams in the NFC. So I have to give them a higher ranking than some of these other teams. I don't think their record is an indicator as to how good they are. I think they're playing excellent football. They just need to stop making mistakes. And I think once they do that, this team's going to go on a massive stretch here. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they'll go on a losing streak and I look stupid. But if that's the case, then I will admit to my faults. Moving to number 6, I got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Buccaneers are 4-1, but they're a couple plays away from being a 5-0 team. Man, that was an awesome game versus Seattle. And it was a pretty fun game versus Philadelphia a few weeks ago. This Buccaneers team is clearly one of the best teams in the NFC. And when you look at the landscape of the NFC, it's very competitive, but there's clearly some tiers starting to form in terms of favorites, contenders, and playoff teams. And right now, you got to admit, the Buccaneers are probably in that contenders category, and they're kind of working their way up to being one of the favorites. I don't think they're the favorites yet, hence why they're not in my top 3 or 5, but they're really, really close to getting there. I like this team. I love their young talent. They have some maturing they need to do on the defensive end because they do have a couple young guys out there. Ben Morrison, Jacob Parrish, and I just want to see more from this pass rush and in general the linebacking core too. But you got to think this offense is one of the best offenses out there for sure. Baker Mayfield's playing at a borderline MVP level. Once they get fully healthy, they should be even better, and I still think this is one of the best defenses out there. There's a lot to like about this Buccaneers team, and I think they're truly a top team in the NFC. Moving to number 5, I got the Green Bay Packers. I'll keep this one short. They had a bye week this week, weeks 1 and 2. Pretty awesome. These past 2 weeks have been a little bit more up in the air. I still think they're a very good team. They just have to get a couple things figured out. Moving to number 4, the Indianapolis Colts. If the season ended today, the Colts would be the number 1 seed in the AFC. And let's not forget, the Colts are a Adonai Mitchell mistake, or 2 mistakes away from being 5-0. Had Adonai Mitchell not made those mistakes, they'd probably beat the LA Rams. So they're 4-1, easily could be 5-0. They are truly an awesome team. They have one of the highest net point differentials with a positive 74. Granted, the game against the Raiders really inflated their numbers, but still a positive 74 net point differential. I love a lot about this team. I think Jonathan Taylor is playing at a super elite level. I think Tyler Warren is playing like potentially the offensive rookie of the year. They got a bunch of weapons on the outside, an awesome offensive line, a defense that's opportunistic and can create turnovers. They're not perfect. They need a pass rusher to step up, and they need Zaire Franklin to play a little bit better, and maybe some help in the secondary too. But they're still a really good defense. This is one of the best teams in the NFL. They've shown it now against high-level competition and even bad competition that they can be competitive and dominate whoever they want out there. They are a team that is sneakily moving into potentially being one of my favorites to even make it to a Super Bowl this year. Like, they are playing at such a high-end level. The question now will be, we've seen Daniel Jones do it for 5 weeks. Can he translate this over to the playoffs? Because we saw how Sam Darnold had a great year all of last year and then struggled in the playoffs. Can Daniel Jones continue his success all the way into the playoffs? We'll have to wait and see. It's a little too early to tell. Moving to number 3, I got the Buffalo Bills. I'm going to use a similar logic here with the Rams. I know the Bills had a pretty disappointing loss versus the Patriots, but if the Bills and the Colts were to square off, I would still favor the Buffalo Bills, hence why I had them in front of them. I do think this Bills team has concerns. I don't think they're, going away scotch-free here. I think their offense is really good, and I really don't have many concerns there. I think they just kind of slept through the Patriots game. I think that offense can play a lot better. Defensively, though, they have some issues in the secondary. I know they can get after the quarterback, but Matt Milano has taken a huge step back. Their linebackers are not great, and their safeties are also not very good either. Neither are their corners. Now, they'll get Maxwell Hairston back, but, when he is healthy and fully a go, is he a game changer? I don't know yet. So I'm kind of worried for this Bills defense because I look at this offense and I say it's one of the best offenses out there, but I worry a tad bit about this defense. The good news for the Bills, the AFC is wide open. It is wide open this year. I mean, the Ravens are almost out of the conversation here. If the Chiefs lose a couple more games, like 3 more games, they might not make the playoffs. And if they do, they're going to be, very beatable this year. So the Bills have a path. This is kind of their year. They are the lone team of all the favorites we talked about at the beginning of the season on the AFC side of things that can still go. And maybe the Kansas City can turn it around, but I still think Buffalo has a better chance. We'll keep an eye on them. Buffalo has a very winnable schedule the rest of the way. So let's hope that this game against the Patriots didn't kill all the momentum and they start to go on a losing streak, because that would be very shocking. Moving to number 2, I got the Philadelphia Eagles. Yes, I moved them to number 2. I have been kind of wanting to do this for a while because I just have a hard time buying into this offense right now. I know Hurts has played better football lately, and I definitely want to give him his flowers, but man, they have just been very subpar so far this year. They cannot run the football to save their life right now. And against the Broncos, they basically abandoned the run. I think Saquon had 6 carries on the game. And this passing game is sort of hit and miss right now. It's either really good one drive, but there's other drives where it's constant 3 and out. It's either this Philadelphia team goes on a big 15-play drive that ends up in a touchdown, or it's 3 and out. And to me, that's very hard to sustain, especially when we talk about going up against high-level offenses and high-powered offenses. I do think coaching is holding them back, but I also do want to put some of the blame on Jalen Hurts and some of his inefficiencies as a pocket passer. He's a great quarterback. He can get out. He can make explosive plays. He's one of the best deep ball throwers in all of football. But when it comes to like dissecting defenses that is not in the RPO or quick game, when I'm talking about having to drop back, make tight window intermediate throws, that's really not his game. And that kind of does hold back this Eagles team. You're seeing a lot of teams right now you know, stacking the box, making it difficult to run, and then playing a lot of zone, making things harder for Hurts to find open guys. And it's hurting this Eagles team. I think they're a good team. They have championship DNA. They clearly are one of the best teams in the NFL. And if they win the Super Bowl this year, it wouldn't shock me at all. They got a number of dudes on this team, and I do think the offense will only just get better. But they have some things they got to figure out, so that's why they're at my number 2. But at my number 1, call it an overreaction, I got the Detroit Lions. I'm back on the Lions hype train, y'all. I'm back on the hype train. Week 1 was bad. But I'm willing to forgive week 1 because it's week 1. That's always a more difficult game. Since then, they have been awesome. They have just been awesome. I know they gave some points up to Cincinnati late into that game, which is a bit concerning, but I'm not too overly concerned about it. They have responded well from week 1 and have been the team that we saw last year, which last year, that was a team that I pretty consistently had inside my top 2 or 3. I think they were number 1 for a couple weeks, and I'm right back there with this team. They have the offense. I think defensively, they're injured right now, which is concerning, especially because we saw how, you know, the dominoes continue to fall with injuries defensively last year. I hope that's not the case this year. But Reed will return. You'll get Terrion Arnold back at some point, so your secondary will just get better. But Hutchinson is back. He's playing at a very high-end level. The linebackers are great. They got good safeties. I think they have fine cornerback depth, and I think they'll survive there. They are far from a perfect team, but I think they have a recipe for success. The coordinators have basically seamlessly transitioned now at this point. They're playing at a very high-end level. Still one of the best coaching staffs in the football. I love their quarterback. I love this team. I have the Detroit Lions as my number 1 team heading into week 6 of the 2025 season. This is my official power rankings for week 6. You guys let me know in the comment section below, what do you agree with and what do you disagree with? And if you enjoyed, hit the like and subscribe button. Love you guys. Peace.